Happy Thursday. Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we have Sifu Matthew on the Wolff Den, in the Wolff Den. I still haven't figured that out yet. I gotta practice that. Welcome to the show. How's everything going?
Thank you. It's going great. It's going great. Thank you for having me today. Really nice to be here with you.
Yeah, I like the yellow screen. We don't have green screen here. We got the yellow screen background. For those who don't know who you are, just give us a quick introduction,
Okay.
and then we'll get into everything.
Okay, rock on. So I'm a Sifu in the martial arts in a few systems of Kung Fu. So that means I've been doing it a really long time. We'll just kind of say that. And I have been working with healing injuries. So primarily, a lot of my life has been learning how to use the martial arts to heal bodies. And I've worked with professional athletes. I've worked with all different types of injuries, basically using the understanding of chi or electricity and how electricity works in the body through the mastery of the martial arts. I also do recovery work with people. So I work on getting people sober in this process and understanding what is sobriety and how do you actually become sober for real, not just alcohol and booze, but like a sober mind and sober power by using the understanding of the electricity of the martial arts, which is kind of what my expertise is.
Okay, well, the first part of that is, how did you get into martial arts?
Okay, so I started the martial arts when I was 3 years old, and my father was in the martial arts. So my father was actually in medicine, alternative medicine. Okay, and he was also brown belt in judo when I was 3, and so it was recommended basically to get me into that pretty quick. I was wild kid, really out of control, out of balance. Took me a long time to calm down.
Let's hear an example. You're at 3 years old. You were wild. Everyone's wild.
Temper tantrums at 3, obviously, but I can remember just back to 5. I was always getting injured. I was like jumping off of porches, and I was one of those kids who was like very, very hyperactive, and I would say there was a fair bit of craziness in the household as well, which I'm happy to get into later. But so it didn't help anything really. So at that time, at that age, my father was teaching me some things in the house, and then my mom had actually was looking at classes at the time. She was like, "There's a judo class. Should we put this kid in judo?" And everyone was like, "Yeah." And she asked me, and I was like, "Yeah." I didn't even know, I didn't understand it, but I was like, "Yeah." So yeah, I started that when I was so little, and I've done it consistently since. So it's about 47 years.
No need to age yourself. We're all
All right, I don't mind. It's all
we're all old here, but getting older every day, which is the key. That's the key to it, right? Just get older every day, one at a time.
Right.
Let's talk about martial arts. Like, what is martial arts? Because if I ask the average person, if you're on the street and you ask the average person what martial arts is, they think Cobra Kai, Karate Kid.
Yeah, it's like it's fighting.
That's
right.
what they think about martial arts. What is I mean, there's an obvious definition of martial arts, but what does martial arts mean to you?
So what it means to me, simplest, is force mastery. So mastery of your forces. And so fighting is one force. Fighting is only one thing. So when you look at the birth of martial arts, okay, comes from a need to basically protect ourselves. So if you look at the ancient Chinese systems and Japanese and even African martial arts, they all came from conflict. They came from abuse. They came from needing to protect themselves at the time. So they would come up with whatever system was appropriate for their landscape, where they lived, the temperature. Judo was throwing because the Japanese were fighting people with armor. So they're not going to punch them with armor. They threw them. And then you fall with armor, you're going to break into pieces. And the Koreans were using Taekwondo to kick people off of horses. And it's why they have those wild kicks. So each art was developed for a certain region and a certain purpose. Now, if you think about the martial arts were designed to balance out the forces that are trying to hurt you, right? Trying to create an imbalance. So you train, you get to a point where what's the first thing you do is you have to master your own. Because if you can't control your own, you can't certainly work with somebody else's who's trying to hurt you. Okay. So if we go back to that phase and we say, okay, well, it's really balanced, is it not? Because if you're going to battle, what do you want to do? You want to create balance back in the region. If you look at what's going on in the world right now, the tragedy of this is there's no balance. It's that people can violate and harm, and at some point we have to stand up and create balance. So that's what the martial arts is doing. Now, take that to the level of yourself, your mind, your body, your emotions. It's taking you to a place where you're like, okay, how do you heal yourself? How do you balance your own forces?
Yeah,
That's
that
how
was.
I'm looking at that.
I mean, that was Miyagi's maybe one of his most famous quotes, right? He's when he was asking about between karate and the girl, and he said, "If you don't have balance for yourself, you'll never have balance." I'll have to look it up
You
again.
know what? That's I get you. I get
He had
it.
a great quote about balance and balance in life, and because there's lessons to be learned. It's not just like a cliche that the Karate Kid had. There are really good lessons to be learned from the martial arts. But why judo? Why the need for all the different variations? Because they're very similar to each other, correct?
Well, I mean, you mean martial arts wise, or what I chose to do? Meaning my
I would
journey
say
was
if we're on the martial arts topic, not what
they're
you chose to
really
do is
different.
different.
Okay,
Obviously, you're taking it to a new level.
they're different. They're really different.
All of them.
So I think kung fu, okay, which is the Chinese martial arts. It's a generic term for Chinese martial art. So kung fu, there's like 2,000 systems, and you'd be like 2,000 systems. You couldn't even learn 2,000 moves in one system, let alone 2,000 systems. So if you think about how many different ways our bodies move, how many sports there are in the world, and what the different targets are in a martial art, they could be very, very different. So you'd have a martial art, let's say, that's only for grappling. I'm sure you've seen jujitsu, like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the martial arts now, the UFC, MMA, that stuff.
Yeah, for $1 million, I couldn't tell you the difference between that. If they just played a
Okay.
clip and you said, "Hey, what is
Okay.
this?" And I think most people
Like
would.
most people. Okay. So basic way to explain it is it's different skills that would be focused on more what's needed. So you have a big following of ground fighting, okay, in the United States now. And that was the Gracies brought that in. The ground fighting is like, well, if you're a boxer or you don't know how to fight, someone gets you on the floor. How do you fight on the floor? How do you get balance or control on the floor? Okay.
Choke
Yeah.
them out.
What do you say?
You choke them out.
Yeah, that's what they do. Okay. Yeah, that's one way to kind of balance out the situation. Then you have arts that are very much about hand fighting, like just really strong hand skills, hand fighting, like Wing Chun is like that. Close quarters. Bruce Lee had worked with that. I mean, we could go on and on, but the point is they're different,
Well, but then why do you not just go to a class and then figure out maybe what your strengths are and which you should be doing, right? Because you say you go right to judo, I might go right to jujitsu, I might go right to karate.
Sure.
Shouldn't there be some sort of like a class to say, here you have some sort of test to say, I'm better with my hands, or maybe I'm better, with my feet, and then maybe that's the direction you should go. How do people choose what to do?
I think unfortunately sometimes people go by either you learn by trial by error. So I
Mhm.
think a lot of times people go to a certain art or they hurt themselves or they don't like it, it doesn't feel right to their body, and then they change. And then I think there's certain people like myself that wanted to learn many skill sets because I wanted to be very well rounded. And so for me, it was like, okay, I wanted to learn the judo, very unique. Judo does a lot of throwing, using other people's body weight against them. But then I felt like I wasn't really good with close quarter hand power. So I wanted to learn that. And then eventually I just got into the energy of it completely, like the electricity and the healing. And I was much more interested in the Chinese internal arts after that. So, I also think our bodies break a lot. I think that martial arts can hurt people's bodies terribly if they're not learning the healing part of it. And so that's a big issue. And that's something that I became really interested in because I was also playing some like, Division III college basketball. I wrestled in college and I really hurt my body pretty badly. So it came back to the martial arts for me to actually heal my body. And that was sort of how I came into what I did.
I love capoeira,
Yeah.
which is martial arts as well, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
people know that.
Yeah.
And Shaolin
Yep.
there was a movie called Shaolin Soccer. Have you seen this movie?
I have not, but I've
Oh
seen
man,
I've seen clips.
it's a
Yeah.
great movie. You got to watch it. It's a weird movie.
Okay.
It's like because it's Japanese, but
Okay.
it's maybe it's subtitles. I don't know. It's one of those like
Right.
car crash movies that you can't turn away. You're like, this is so
Okay.
terrible that it's great.
Okay.
I definitely recommend Shaolin Soccer for a movie if you're into the arts. So you become very good at martial arts.
Yeah, pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Competent.
Okay, you could say it.
Proficient. I'm proficient.
Yeah.
You're always growing, though. I mean, you're always growing.
Could you
So.
compete? Are you good enough to compete?
I did some competitions, small stuff, not like big. I was more interested in the fighting aspect and the healing aspect, but I did do some things. I ended up hurting somebody at a certain point and was not happy with that. It felt like that was a big issue.
And this was before you were doing the healing, so you weren't able to heal them.
I was still doing the healing, but it wasn't on my mind at the time. So it's a big topic these days of males getting aggressive. I mean, look at just what happened the other night at the Oscars, and so I think
I didn't see it. What happened?
Oh, did you have you been on the news at all? Okay, I
was actually funny
UFCs.
story. I was on a cruise and my wife texted me this long thing, and I'm like, no, there's no way that happened.
Right,
Crazy.
it happened. So
that was not an official martial arts move.
What'd you say?
That was not an official martial arts move. That will.
No, but it was pretty dangerous from my perspective. Watching that from my eye, I was like, wow, he could have really hurt that guy.
All kidding aside, all kidding aside, my friend Brent, who usually is here, we joke around, but I have a no punch in the face policy because you could kill someone first of all, but the damage that you can do to someone, it's incredible, the damage that can be done. And so, I wouldn't punch someone in the face. I'd find another way to unarm them or, to take away the threat.
Yeah. I mean, look, if this is, I guess, an interesting topic of conversation, given with everything that's going on, we can really hurt each other in so many ways. We hurt each other with the media. We hurt each other with not being considerate. We can hurt each other physically. And that kind of damage can be hard to undo. Once you do something and you're not really aware of what the repercussion is, it's very dangerous. It has a strong aftershock. And I think so much of what I would call being sober and training is about understanding what are you going to do, because we have so many impulses. We could be sad, we can have mood swings, we can feel disempowered one day and then empowered, and the next thing we act from the wrong place. And that's where a lot of all addictions are coming from, that place. And even the idea, let's say, of Will Smith feeling addicted to slap Chris Rock in the face in front of millions of people because he couldn't control himself. That's terrible. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for both of them. It's a very, very difficult.
Yeah, to not be able to control impulses for anything is. I've had it, not in an anger point of view, and nothing that was detrimental to anyone. Maybe even just by myself, which is still even not to a higher level. But it's a tough to have no control, and everyone has control to some extent, but some people don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, think about you're bringing up a good point. Think about how many areas we don't have control in. Okay. Maybe it's food, maybe it's your moods, maybe it's your thoughts, maybe it's what you want to create that you're not being consistent with. Maybe it's discipline, but to have the control to be in complete alignment with what you actually want, right? And to make sure what you want isn't toxic. That's the big piece. There's lots of guys out there or girls who have discipline, and then they bring the wrong thing into their life. They're like, okay, yeah, I want to get this, and then you get it, and you cause a train wreck for yourself.
Yeah, power, money, strength, all of that.
Yeah,
a lot of things can go wrong quickly.
Totally. So the authenticity piece is what's really important. It's that connection to reality. Okay, let's jump back to the healing for a second. I'll make a point that I think is really interesting. So, I'll do healing. I've done this for so many years. And to me, simplest explanation is I'm giving you a jump start. Okay. It's electricity. I work with electricity. I understand that, how you do that. Bodies are electric. Chi is electricity. If you have an area in your body that doesn't have enough electricity and the tissue compresses and the circulation is off, charge could potentially help that. Okay. Now, I have a lot of videos circulating on the internet where people heal from very strange things. They've been sick with joint issues. They can't move an arm, children, dogs. I've been doing this since I was a little kid. It's not rocket science to me. It's just you master your energy, you know how to move electricity, and something happens a lot of times, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on what the person's body can do. Okay. But that tells you we have a power to make a change with our electricity. So if you're taking that electricity and you're doing the wrong thing with it, but you're telling yourself it's right, that's when you're out of that zone. That's when it's really dangerous.
It's like The Boys. Do you watch The Boys on Amazon? Like
no. You know what? Years ago, I did see a couple episodes of that. Okay, yeah, it is. It's like it's using what you have in the wrong way, and so then you can't be sober if you lose track of what's even correct for yourself anymore.
What are we defining sober as?
Balanced in your forces. So what would throw us off? You know, if you look at Vladimir Putin, okay, you look at without getting too political, let's just say the Will Smith event, or anybody who is doing something really aggressive, okay, out of context. So that's way out of balance. But they think they're doing the right thing. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, that's narcissism almost.
Right? Sure. But you know, there's so many, I would say even beyond narcissism, like I'd say that's a huge part of it on one kind of dominant end, right? Then there's people doing it in other angles, right? There's people who could be doing other behaviors where they're not aware of what they're doing and they're causing damage on a certain level. And the issue is saying what's the baseline? Like, how do we find out what is correct?
But we talked about this on yesterday's show. There's one might be out of character for someone. One might be this is who this person is.
Right. Well, okay. So I can only give you my experience with this. I think nature decides what's correct and what's not. Okay. And where you find nature is in your body. So when you feel good and you're balanced, you're in the right zone. When you're not, you're not. Now, our mind can override our body. Like, for example, you've played sports, I'm assuming. Okay. So I'm sure have you ever overplayed, like damaged your body and just been like gone too far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the concept of going too far is the mind overriding the body. The body's like, no more, my man. It's like, I've had enough. And then the mind is like, no, I need a win and I'm not leaving. And I've done it. I've destroyed my body when I was younger, destroyed it. I've had injuries and surgeries because of that. It's how I became what I am. It's why I do what I do. So that level of stupidity or lack of integration, like not willing to listen, is what's causing these problems. So until you really learn to respect the body and listen to it, you can't find sobriety or balance. There's no way to do it.
Yeah, my body does not want to do what my mind tells it to do. And when I play,
there you go.
But that's because I'm older and less in shape. And I was never really in great shape anyway, but less than I was in good athletic shape for doing stuff. So how do you decide? I think you already answered it, but let's get into it a little bit more. How do you decide to move from being someone who's doing martial arts to someone who wants to use martial arts and energy to heal?
Okay.
Electricity?
Yeah, I call it electricity, energy, either one. It's both, you know, be the same in many ways. So I learned a lot of it when I was younger, number one. So I was learning this when I was 5, 6.
Who's teaching you this? Your judo?
My father taught me. Okay. And then I was around other martial arts people who were doing this as well. So judo doesn't really deal with the energy as much, but I had learned some stuff from my father, and I was also just kind of attuned to it. So I was aware of it in judo in a bizarre way, because judo, you're throwing bodies and you're basically working more with grabbing and offsetting center of gravity. Okay. But I could feel things that I didn't understand. I was very sensitive to how people were moving, where I felt they were blocked, where things, I didn't know how to put that into a language until 20 years later, but I was kind of attuned to that. And then as I was getting older, I was always involved in it. So I had taken some seminars where I had learned Qigong and learned a lot about Qi and energy. And then as I started getting older, even more of it. But I was around it because my father was a physician and he was dealing with bone manipulation, bone setting, even using his electricity earlier on. So I'd seen this, and it wasn't really like an odd thing to me. I was like, oh, okay, that works. And I'd seen people get better from doing stuff when I was very young as well. So the real transition was in my late 20s. Okay. So I was always doing healing, meaning as I got older, I was doing it. I was doing it when I was 13, 18, 20, but finally got to a point where I had some body issues and could not fix them. Really, really like thought I was finished. I mean, my knees were totally shot. I was like 27.
Yeah.
I had 2 ankle surgeries. I had a nerve cut by accident in one of my surgeries in my ankle. I had cluster headaches. I had a whole bunch of issues and was not getting anything. I'd gone to acupuncture. I had done many, many different things, could not get the results. And finally I was like, okay, I have to do something for myself and I need to figure out how to do this. And so I started going back to what I knew, which I had been doing, but I couldn't understand why it wasn't working yet for me. Like, why wasn't I doing it? And then I started to realize there were so many pieces. There was focus. There was taking a lot of time. I mean, thousands and thousands of hours of going into meditation and calmness and understanding my own electricity. Like, how does it work? Where is it off? What's not happening? How do you accumulate it? How do you do it? I started working with that a lot and also studying more about body alignment, body posture, body position in the martial arts. And then by doing that stuff, I started getting pretty incredible results, really like incredible. And so that was basically the transition. And then, from a certain period in time, I was like, that's it. There's nothing else for me to do because this is what I do. And then, of course, I got sober when I was 22. I was an addict at 9, so that sort of fell into there as well.
An addict at 9.
Yeah.
Of what?
I was drinking. I was drinking alcohol when I was very little.
Was that with your dad?
Well, it was available, I would say, like through synagogues in the Jewish community. So I was kind of grabbing things and stashing them. Okay. But then I would just, when I could get a hold of it, I would take it, and then I would make myself sick, like alcohol poisoning, really bad.
In private, though, you're not like.
No, I mean, I did it at a few synagogues publicly when I was very little.
Right, but that's people take a sip. It's not a.
I took like 30 sips and then ended up green, and my parents were like practically reviving me, and everyone was like, "What happened to the Klein kid?" So that that was going on, and that was something that was on and off, and only the martial arts helped me with that. No way around that.
How long? I mean, you say you're an addict. How long were you drinking at 9?
I drank till I was 22, and it was sporadically. So it was like, but not all the time. Meaning, so like I drank at 9, got really sick, then kind of left it, and then would still kind of dabble when I could. And, would drink way too much, like at Shabbos dinners or whatever was available. I was drinking too much. But then as I started getting older, it'd be like I'd not want to drink anything, but then I'd get near it and I'd be completely out of control and sick again. And then when I started getting off on my own, high school and college, it was really severe. And then
it's an environment.
What'd you say?
I mean, that's an environment that's easy to
For sure. But I had a lot of friends that were not doing what I was doing.
Yeah, you had a head start at 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so with doing the healing, when was the first time you used energy or electricity to heal? Because you had to have done this and then say, oh, this is something I can do. You don't just say, oh, let me do this and then figure it out, right?
No. I can recall this. So I remember having worked with my father on it. I would work on him on specific things. And then I would have friends around me in school where they would have an injury. Someone would have an injury or a problem, and I would use my force and I would start working with it. And so I was able to help people probably early teens. And then it was just a natural thing for me to do because I was practicing moving my electricity and my chi. So it sort of just was there and I understood it. Now, that being said, I developed it tremendously for decades, developed it. So studied it. I did study a lot. So when I was in my 20s and then 30s, I had masters who taught me energy work. They taught me how to move electricity, and I became, let's say, a master or a Sifu in some of those types of Kung Fu systems that were about moving electricity and energy. So I did a lot of training, a lot of practice.
But you remember the first time you did it?
No, I would say I have to think back to that as to when the first time was. I know I recollect working with it when I was very young, and I know that I was doing that in the house. So I think I had done it on my sister. I think I had done it on my father, and then for sure friends.
And this is like a novelty for them, right? And they were like, "Hey, do that thing on me."
Yeah, pretty much. Because look, I remember before I was doing it professionally, which I started probably in my late 20s, okay? But I remember helping people with some serious injuries, friends of mine who had like a wrist injury, an ankle injury, headaches. But what happened was, as that progressed, it became really measurable. Okay, so I did a study at a research institute, like a pilot study, where I was working with patients who had poor range of motion and inflammation, and showing that we could change range of motion very fast where nothing else had worked on it before. And so some of the cases I've worked on were neuropathy, okay, like where someone literally had no sensation for 30 years. That's a common thing that I was able to help. I had people who had arthritic things they couldn't move. I had worked with a little boy. I remember vividly. He had he was born with a crushed, it's like thoracic outlet. It's this area. So he couldn't move his fingers and he couldn't hold a cup. And I remember working on him, and it's on my Facebook page. You can see it. But I remember with him and his mom, and he started being able to button his shirt again, and he had no range of motion. So there's like thousands of those types of situations that I've seen over the years. For me, though, it's very simple. It's like the body has things it wants to do. If you give it the right thing, it will heal. If you give it the wrong thing, it's not going to. So
how do you know, like, because you're transferring energy?
Yes.
How do you know what amount to give? If it's enough, if it's too much? Because too much could possibly make things worse.
Well, yeah. If I would say it'd be hard to do that, but there is a real science to this. So the science of being, let's say, a Qigong master is that you practice Qi work for many hours a day, 3 hours a day, like you would any other skill. So what's happening is you're developing a level of sensitivity. Okay, kind of like how let's say you're playing a sports game. This be a good analogy for you. You're playing sports and you get in front of someone and you just know I'm going to go around him. You're like, okay, I'm going to beat that guy this way, or I'm going to take the J on him, or whatever you're going to do. Okay, how do you know? Because you're feeling him. You're feeling it. It's an electricity connection between you guys. Electromagnetic field, very, very simple, basic kind of Einstein science of electrical fields. So same thing when your body has pulses, has electrical pulses, right? You have EEG, EKG, so you can feel those things. Just like, you have a headache, your pulses are really hot. So as you get skilled, you can put your hand out and you send a pulse, and then you get a pulse back in your hand, and you can feel it. You feel, oh, that pulse is really weak. That pulse is strong. That's lopsided. I mean, you can get very specific. So it's a skill, and you develop it. And then as you get better at it, like, hit that spot and get through it. And then you listen and you're like, it didn't go through, or it did.
But you're not a doctor or a scientist.
Well, I'm a Qi scientist is what I would say.
Yeah.
So
is there any like documentation? I'm just saying, is there like a level you become a Qi?
Yeah, a Sifu. Yeah. So I'm a master of a Qi master. So I'm like a Qigong master.
And that's going through the steps the same way like getting a black belt.
Yeah, except it's in the Chinese internal arts. So I studied, let's say, I studied an art called Langung, which is all about connective tissue healing, breath healing, moving electrical force in the body. So I spent like 12 years doing that, training it every day. And I've also studied other types of trainings.
So Sifu is basically sensei. What does Sifu mean?
Yeah, Sifu means it could be father, teacher, master, organizer, someone who holds a body of knowledge.
Do you generally call someone Sifu Matthew or just Sifu? How does that? I should have probably asked you.
So everyone's it's like Dr. Bob or Doctor. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to get. There's a funny Chevy Chase. There's a scene in Chevy Chase with Fletch in the hospital with Doctor, and we won't talk about it here. But if you haven't seen it, I'll send it over to you.
Send it. I'm sure I saw it when I was a kid. But
as a fellow, as someone who's Jewish as well, you'll appreciate it. It's
okay.
It's pretty funny. Can you bend a spoon with energy?
I don't bend. I'm not a magician that way. I don't do that kind of stuff. I've only focused on like healing. The thing,
is that the same concept? Because we had Wayne Hoffman on, who's a mentalist. Isn't that the same idea?
I don't know enough about that, but I don't know. I'll tell you, I don't know enough. I just know that some of them are doing certain types of tricks per se. I'm not doing any tricks. So I'm like cultivating electricity and putting it in a body and basically sending a charge. So I don't know, because I know some of that stuff are like certain skills they develop to read, to understand, a moment, and it's magic. So if it's not magic and they're really using electricity, sure. I guess it would be the same. I don't know.
They're using something with their mind, which is magic. I mean, call it whatever you want. I'd say that what you're doing is magic, even though it's not, it's not traditional magic. Like, I don't know what the word is, but if you can heal someone's aches by just sending energy and touching or using your mind, to me, that's magical.
Well, yeah, I guess
not magic, but it's magical. Or
right. It's so okay. Here's a good good definition. So I used to say magic is something that you understand and someone else doesn't. Right? It's like magic is something that, let's say, I get but you don't. So then we have to call it magic. But on a certain level, the body is really doing this all by itself. So here's what's really interesting. Let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you have a frozen shoulder. Okay. So you know what those are, right? You've seen them. Someone can't move their shoulder. So what happens in a frozen shoulder? Basically, the joint gets stuck. Okay. The tissue's contracted. The blood vessels and capillaries are not flowing well. Oxygen doesn't get into the joint. You lose range of motion. Okay. Now, what heals it? Energy and blood, right? Blood. So you need blood flow for sure. You got to have blood flow. Then you got to have some electricity in there, which is in the blood, because blood has minerals. Okay. Now, if I take my hand because I know how to move that electricity, I'm just a conduit, and I stick it, let's say, in the back of the scapula where it's jammed, that I'm able to run enough heat, right, into that spot, enough electricity, and it goes, and the body gets the signal and it breaks open some adhesions. So what you're doing is you're doing what the body would have done by itself. The problem is it can't do it anymore because it can't hear its own signal. So in a way, I'm acting like a body for your body. So that's where it's kind of quite natural. But you have to have your own experience with it for yourself, and then you'll grasp it more. Possibly.
But the people, like, I'm obviously I'm Jewish, and so when they have the healing things, what is that? I mean, that's
like what do you mean the healing things?
Like when someone will put their hand on them and like, oh, magically they can walk. That's not doing this.
I don't know. I can only tell you this. It's a good question, but I'm gonna say this. If something real happens, okay, let's just get scientific. If something real happens where there was a problem in the body that actually changed, then there's an electromagnetic signal going into that body, creating a shift on a cellular level. Otherwise, nothing changes. So there's a lot of fake stuff out there. Okay. There's also a lot that's not. So my experience of doing studies on this and actually working with doctors as well is that there has to be an electromagnetic field change, because that's how our thoughts change and that's how our electricity change. So there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm like, no, okay, but if it happened and there was like a physiological shift, then there was an electrical change in the body.
But so different than maybe hypnotism, the receiver doesn't need to be a believer because you're exchanging energy.
For sure. Yeah. See, it's a great comment you're making. So I'll tell you a couple of stories that were really interesting. So in the course of doing this earlier on, and honestly, right now, I'm focused much more on teaching people how to use that for themselves. So if you were a client of mine, I'd be showing you what to do to like use your energy to do what you wanted to do with it, versus I'm not coming around and being like, okay, Shazam, it's not what I want to do. I want you to learn how to do that. It's a level of mastery of yourself. That's all it is.
Well, before you got that's sort of a follow up on that is, if I have a frozen shoulder and you transfer energy and heal it, is that temporary, or
it depends on you? It depends on you. Okay, it wouldn't be any different from doing acupuncture or having a surgical procedure. It depends on what your body's doing and if you maintain it. So it'd be like a jump start in a car, like where
they change the battery though. You're not changing the battery. But
right.
You teach people how to keep, like, once it's sort of free, do you teach them how to keep it free?
Definitely. 100%. Because you have to deal with the issue as to why it got that way.
Yeah.
So back to your question, which is great. So there were a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. They don't believe at all in what I do. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't really matter, because the body's smarter than their mind is what I say. So, I remember there was this kid, and there's a video on YouTube on it. It's got a lot of views. Basically, I was just working at an expo, and he came to me, and he was kind of on the expo staff, and he was limping. And he just said to me, he's like, look, I don't believe in what you do at all. He said, but somebody here said you're actually really good at it. And he said, I have a huge problem. He had a huge problem. He was working at an Earl Scheib, and those huge car lifts, those like huge lifts, one of them fell on his foot. Okay. Apparently what he said was it tore up his nerves in the foot. And basically he couldn't sleep ever. He was on painkillers 24/7. You could not touch his foot at all. Couldn't touch his leg. He couldn't walk on that side. And he also, the skin was changing.
Roll up in a wheelchair?
No, he was like painkillered, and then was like, had a crutch or something with him. So he was like hobbling, right? And his skin was changing colors all the time. Like, I don't know what that condition is, but probably neurologically it was shifting colors. It was like white, and then it was red. So I remember,
you don't want skin changing colors like that. That's the diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have my own language of what was going on. That was very interesting. He said to me, I do my thing. I would just sense what I feel is happening, and then I say, I'm going to approach it this way. This is what I sense. This is what I'm going to do in my own language and world. Let's see what happens. Okay. And he had said to me that the doctors were going to implant a rod in his spine, an electrical rod conductor, because they wanted to get the nerves to calm down. Makes sense? So that's electricity. So I said to him, I will do my version of that in my own way, and let's see what happens. Okay. He changed dramatically in a very short period of time. And it was all on video, where not only could I touch his leg, all the sensitivity disappeared. He was walking on his foot. He wasn't hobbling. He slept, because I'd spoken to him like a couple of months after, but he started sleeping much more normally. He got off his painkillers, and it took me about 3 hours. Okay. So it was like 3 40-minute sessions, and he didn't believe at all in any of it.
And then, but where is he? How's he doing today? He's never had a relapse?
I don't know. I mean, I think I had spoken to him maybe a year or so after that. And I know he was doing a lot better. I know he was in physical therapy, but no, he was definitely a lot better than what he was before.
Yeah. Why? And so is this that's an ailment, that's an injury, as opposed to maybe a disease like an ALS or stuff like that. Sure. What's the distinction for something that you would work on?
Well,
Parkinson's, stuff like that.
Okay, injuries for me sometimes are going to be easier because they're sudden changes in their body. They don't always have like a massive emotional component to them like a disease would have. Now, some people believe in that or don't, that emotions affect our neurology and our cell biology. I personally am like, absolutely, it does. 100% it does. So disease is very different because sometimes those can be held in place by someone for whatever reason. You don't know. It's something that their body created, So to come in and be like, okay, I'm going to uncreate this. It's like, no, the body has to want to use the electricity or whatever, however we want to put that, the electrical field and the particles to shift it. So
You did. No, keep going.
no, go ahead.
Now, I was just say you did studies. Like, do we have an idea of what percentage of success you have?
I did a pilot study, and it was supposed to turn into a full study, and then we couldn't coordinate it schedule wise. I was traveling, everyone was super busy. So, but I saw 10 people who had range of motion and inflammation. So they were all at a hospital in a clinical setting, going to physical therapy after surgery. Most of them. I'm trying to remember if it was surgery. I think majority of them had surgery and they were rehabbing from it. And so basically I worked on, it's like 10 people, I think, and it was probably like 7 or 8 out of 10 had a pretty dramatic response. And these were things where like they couldn't move a limb. So there were people who had like double knee arthritis. They couldn't straighten their leg. That was one. I remember someone had a fracture, a prior fracture. I think they had surgery on it. They were doing physical therapy. They couldn't bend the arm. Another one like that.
What other use cases would you have for energy and electricity to help someone other than range of motion or
everything? I mean, basically, if you go back to what you do, not what I do with it, but what you can do with it, it's everything. Because what you're training yourself to do is understand the language of your body and your mind. So you're training yourself to understand, look, okay, let's say you're an addict. Okay. Do you have any family members who've had addictions or around friends?
Yeah, I have some friends who are addicted to gambling or
okay, fine. So
some drinking.
Okay, there you go. So let's say they're coming to me, okay, and I'm going to work with them. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm working with their electricity. Why? Because when you need a fix, okay, when you need a fix and you can't stay in one place or calm and you're like, I have to get a fix, I can't control myself, your body's not grounded electrically. Think scientifically, okay? Grounded circuit is not a live wire, okay? So addict's a live wire. He's like, and they can't stop. They cannot stop, okay? So there's a part of them emotionally as well as physically, mentally as well, that is not able to control their electricity. No matter what, they cannot do it. And they may do it for a certain period and they're back. So first thing you're doing is you're going to master a force. We're going to be like, how do you master the force in your legs, hips, feet that has an electrical charge to it? It's not the same as your brain. And you get that body into the earth. And there's tons of studies on earth healing the body, tons of studies on that. Okay. So you learn that and you understand, let's say, a specific process to do it. And the next thing you know, you have an urge, but now all of a sudden you're like, wow, that thing just passed. I was able to ride it out. So that's how you do it. Now, addictions of all kinds can be worked with that way. Can also use it for business. Let's say, I work with corporations, I work with hedge funds and different types of corporations on getting their teams to function at a very high level, okay? Making money, but also not flipping out and becoming crazy stressed and having a nervous breakdown when things are really unpredictable. There's another way you use it. You start learning how to use your position to change your mental state and your emotional state and to enter higher levels of clarity and cognition. And that's a huge skill to have. And that's all electrical. It's all electrical.
Why am I going to you instead of the Chi dojo? I don't know what they call them.
Dojo Quan. Sure. Yeah. Sure. You're coming to me because I have an expertise specifically in understanding, having had a healing background and a fighting background together, I'm understanding how you specifically take a force and apply it toward a unique situation where you're going to get the change that you want. That's why. And also, I have, let's say, a sensitivity specifically for that. So you might go to a chi school for another reason, and there's good reasons to do that. You're just coming to me for the specifics of like, I can't get clean. I've gone to rehab. I've done everything under the sun. I am a nutcase, or I'm doing really well with my business. I'm a porn addict. I'm unfaithful. I'm drinking all the time, and I get it under control for 6 months, and then I'm off again. I don't know, and I've tried everything. I meditate. I've done acupuncture. I need your help. That's what I'm doing.
But you're known as the injury whisperer in some circles. So injury is the core of what you do.
At this point, I would say I'm focusing on sobriety, but I don't separate injury because you have to heal your body. So if you're basically an addict, you're injured. You're injured in your mind.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
It still applies, but that's not.
Yeah.
You're thinking about what most people think. Like the same thing when I say karate or when I say martial arts. Like, what do most people think when you say sober? They're thinking, "Oh, I haven't drank or done drugs in a long time," which is true.
Right.
But you're in a bigger picture.
Yeah. Look, I can tell you from personal experience because I've gone through the ringer, and part of the reason that having been in the program, I was in the AA program for a bunch of years earlier on. It was amazing. Like it really, really saved my life without a doubt. But for me, I felt there were layers that I needed to heal in my psyche, in my body, and I couldn't heal them. I didn't get the tools to heal that specifically. So I went through my own process and started realizing, okay, I need to go a little further with certain things for myself. And I realized that there were other people who also were having similar challenges. So it became really useful to use the martial arts because they're so, if you do it right, so about learning how to get inside the instrument. And think about, Matt, think about the movies, when you see the martial arts guys and how they're like, they're doing something, they got some power in there. They've been training, right? You asked me a question about transferring force, and I just remembered it. So I used to break stuff. So I would train to break stones, break coconuts. And I did this when I was up until about probably 30, 35 or 36. But I would break coconuts with my palm, and I would break red bricks and slabs of concrete. And I was learning how to transfer force to do that. So that was a real skill. It took me a long time to learn how to do that.
Is that like breaking the bricks?
Yeah. But you're doing it with go ahead, I'm sorry.
Energy. You're summoning up the energy to increase the power.
Pretty much. You're focusing your energy in a very specific way. And it's requiring you to put that in a specific place and then deliver it in a specific trajectory or type of a force that you use.
Yeah, I mean, focus is such a big part of the martial arts. With even when you talk about chi and meditating and all of that, focus is also good on the fighting and the aggressive side, but that's a big part, right? The peacefulness of it, the focus of it. It's almost like the Buddha. It's much different than just getting in there and let's try and fight and beat the other person.
Yeah. Look, if you think about how a focused person without compassion can get a lot done, but boy, are they going to create a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Right.
Shot.
Right. Yeah.
Who's the best martial artist? Is it Bruce Lee? I mean, that's what people generally.
Oh God. I mean, I think there are so many talented martial arts players or artists. There's so many. And I think that there's ones in the media, like Bruce Lee was obviously a super talented individual and brought some gifts through for people, but he had one piece of information, whereas like someone else who was a great, the Gracie family who brought grappling in, or the Wing Chun. There's so many great martial artists, really. It'd be like asking me who the best surgeon is in the world. I'd have a hard time answering that,
I would too. I'd have to go with my friend Justin because he's the only surgeon I know.
You're gonna give him a plug. You want to give him a plug?
Oh, Justin Sporer.
What kind of surgeon is
Brain. brain
Oh,
surgeon,
wow. Okay. Wow.
virtual brain surgeon.
Wow.
Yeah, he's down here in Miami. Um, do you watch the movies? Do you watch Cobra Kai? Is it too?
No, I saw it. I saw a little bit of it. I've been really busy just kind of doing the work and getting everything out with some of the new launches, but I'll see things from time to time just to see like what's going on with them.
Like Karate Kid, Crouching Tiger. I mean, do
Oh
these?
yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
give it? Is it portrayed closely, or is it Hollywood? Is it really over
Definitely
dramatized?
Hollywood. I
Yeah.
mean, I think look, here's the piece. Movie fighting is never going to look like a real fight generally because you have to stage it to show it. Real fighting, if it's done efficiently, it can look sloppy. It can be very fast. There can be a lot of resistance to it. It's not going to be like telling a story in a film where you have to show the kick and so there's a lot of stuff that I would say is not realistic from my viewpoint, but there are some movies that are more realistic. Like I've seen a couple. I'm trying to remember. There's this Korean movie, probably 6 or 7 years ago. It was so realistic, but still, it's a film because
Yeah.
when you start having one guy fighting 18 people, you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
You know, no one's going to wait for you. No one's going to wait for you to finish your
Yeah.
punch on the
Yeah.
one
My
guy.
turn.
And
Jackie
yeah,
Chan.
yeah. So that's kind of my take on it.
I like the old school Van Damme when he was in Bloodsport and Double
Sure.
Impact, and he had some pretty great movies. When you talk about the fact that you're healing, you can heal some people, right? Not everyone. Why isn't there a line out the door for miles for people coming to get this? Because there's people who are non-believers, and again, it doesn't matter if they're a believer or
Okay.
not, but to get it, why do you think that is for people like you and other people who do similar things? And I'll
I
be
think
honest, I fall in the same category. I don't know if I believe it or not.
okay.
And I know that it happens, but that doesn't mean I don't know if I would go and do it myself. I might.
I think it depends on here's a valid point. First of all, bodies always heal themselves no matter what. So like I'll say it over and over. Like if someone comes to me with an issue, I'm going to tell you your body's healing it. If I give you a jump start and I help it and I give you some electricity and your body then uses it well, great. But the body's going to do it, right? It's
But
it's
that's
sort of
more
like
on an injury. Again, we're not. Sometimes the body won't heal.
right, and even still, it'll heal when it gets what it wants. So if it happened to come to me, okay, let me think of something that would be an interesting scenario. Okay, yeah. So there was a woman I worked with who had cluster headaches. They're called suicide headaches, and I actually had them when I was a kid and got rid of them through my work, like through my electricity work. I was able to get rid of them. So she came to me and worked on her once, um, one time, and she said they disappeared, and she said she would still get a nerve twinge from time to time, but they vanished. And there's a lot of situations like that. So her body needed to open the channel like an acupuncture. It was blocked. I opened it with a little bit of a shock, and then the body was like, okay, thank you. I know what to do now. That's what's going on. There's nothing like real mystical happening.
Yeah. So it's really more reactive and than preventative. So in order
Yeah.
to do
Well,
something, it has to be an issue. You're not doing something to prevent anything from happening.
Well, the preventative would be something else. So preventative part would be where let's say you were doing a sobriety program with me, okay? And let's say you're an addict, okay? And let's give me an example of somebody who's like got some real problems.
Oh man, we don't have enough time in the
All
show
right.
to talk about all the problems of the people. I'm just kidding. Um, Hey, you know what? I have a friend who always touching his shoulder for some reason. I have
Okay.
no idea why.
But
I don't.
is he an addict? Because I want to talk about the kind of the
Oh,
emotional aspect of it.
no. I know some people someone who was an alcoholic and stopped drinking. I mean,
Okay.
that's
So let's say that this person, let's say we have a person who they can't stop drinking. Okay, it's the first problem, and they've probably got an anger issue. I would assume usually with that, and stressed out. Okay, body's a little bit weak too. So what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to try and get them to build their forces back up, build their organs, build the energy in their organs. Because when you have a weak organ, you're going to have weak electricity to your brain. You're going to have weak electricity to your body. So once you start working with that, they learn how to do that. So that's kind of the what I would call intervention aspect. But then there's a preventative aspect, and the preventative aspect is you do the training every day. So I train every day in these practices, and therefore it helps me stay very vital, very strong. I don't have to sleep a whole lot generally, and I feel pretty good.
How long does that take? How long are you training on every day?
I train a lot because of what I do. As far as like what you would need to do, I mean, 20 minutes or 40 minutes of really good um, electrical force work can do wonders for you. Like
And
20
you're
to 40
doing that
minutes.
yourself. You're creating the electricity yourself.
You pull it from the earth.
Yeah.
So it's in the earth. You're pulling it from the earth and the atmosphere. You're just learning how to store it and then manipulate it. And then there's different positions you use. So based on the position you take, you're going to have a different effect. So if you stand in front of the sun, you have a different electrical field than if you stand by the ocean.
Can you remove energy from someone who's standing there? I mean, if you're transferring energy, you can pull
Yeah, you
energy
can.
from someone
That's a
else.
good question. Absolutely, you can.
And that's obviously bad.
Well, no, because you can pull something out that's negative. Like if someone has a block, right? Okay, let's say I'll give you something really basic. There was someone I worked on years ago who had a bladder condition. Nobody could figure it out. Okay, this was a teenager, and parents brought this person to me, and they were like, nobody knows what's going on. Burning, stabbing, pain in the bladder, can't go to school, can't do anything. Okay. Let's just assume it was blocked. Let me make it really simple. Okay. So there's a shutdown in the electrical circuits we'll call it chi channels between the bladder and the abdomen. And it's like this, it's stuck. And
But
then
how do you know how it's blocked in there without seeing it?
that's the whole sensing aspect. That's kind of like how you can, you can eat a food, okay, and feel like you taste, you know what it is. You can go to a room and feel like it's dense, it's hot. That's just sensitivity over time.
Mhm.
And you just can sense it. And, just like you can feel in your own body, if you took your hand and put it by your head and practice this for a week, you would feel where you feel like a little bit sluggish or stagnant. You'd see you can do a certain level of it.
And none of this is covered by insurance, I assume.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
Why? Is it just, I mean, there's
Well,
a
I
lot of
think
there's, what do they call it? Holistic or,
Yeah, I think there are probably some touch modalities that are like if you were doing like touch energy work or touch massage, then I think some of them do cover it.
right.
But acupuncture is certain forms probably of meditation or
right.
therapy are, and I think in some cities there are brackets for this. I think there's more of it. I just don't take insurance.
No, I get that. How many people are doing what you're doing in the
Well,
U.S. roughly? Is
I
it a
don't
ton
I
of
don't
them?
know because I guess everyone's probably doing their own thing or their own version of it. As
Right, but
far as like
similar. Are there a lot of people doing similar things that you're doing, or is it still not a lot of people doing it?
I would say there's probably more than ever. As far as what I'm doing with sobriety in that specific way, I don't know anybody else doing that. As far as teaching it in this way, I don't know anyone who's doing that. As far as people using energy or electricity, I'm sure there's a fair amount of talented people who are doing that.
And how can you help people without? Do you help people without transferring the energy?
Yeah, sure.
So it's not always just come to me, do this. It's
Never. In fact,
teaching,
that's what I was
training.
saying. Mostly not now. I don't really walk around doing that most of the time. I'm teaching you how to use your electrical force to get sober, to get clear, and I'm teaching you skill sets. So I'm basically training you by saying, okay, you're going to do this, then you do that. So you learn how to feel your force, open your heart electricity, move it, take another position, calm the nervous system, arouse the nervous system. I'm teaching you that.
And mostly one-on-one or in groups?
Both. I do both.
So if I go find more information at sobermartialarts.com,
Yes.
there's some tips, some information, videos.
Yeah. And my Instagram page right now, the Instagram page is Martial Arts of Wellness. There's a lot on there.
So that's
the Sober Martial Arts page is going to get launched, I think, probably tonight or tomorrow. So it's been being rebuilt. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there.
And you're in South Florida too. I met you.
I'm in West Palm.
Met you on Brad Berkowitz's call.
Yeah.
Brad's
That's where we
great.
met.
He does a lot of great work with networking.
Yeah.
I got some people I'm going to send your way to at least take a look at it. I know,
Okay.
you know, my mom is a believer in all of this stuff,
Cool.
which again, you don't need to be a believer, but it always helps when you do believe and feel and seek
Sure.
out these types of
Yeah.
alternative
Yeah.
treatments to help. Because it's just better that way, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
educate yourself to understand if you don't and take a chance.
for sure. But think about, Matt, what's really interesting is think about the martial arts aspect of it, which is really what we're trying to get across is that the idea of channeling a force, right? And then like using it. Okay. You're like taking your power like Bruce Lee or someone who's going to punch through a block of ice or break a coconut. You can't do it without putting force in your body and gathering it. And then you're like, boom, right? You do it, you transfer the force. So this is what this is. That's all it is. You're transferring force to an object.
And you
It's
got to
really not,
practice. You got to practice and practice and
you
practice,
got
and
to
then you
practice and practice
get
and
better at it.
decades
Yeah.
of like to learn to move electricity at this level, it's decades. But what you can do with it is amazing because you can heal yourself, you can help people. And also, look, ultimately, it's the skill set that you can do. So, for example, if you knew how to do that, hey, you might control your moods a little bit better one day, or you could work on feeling like super inspired when you weren't. And you could be able to hold that state very easily if you ever needed that, let's say, that type of situation. Or if you wanted to empower yourself, okay, I got to stand on the earth this way, raise my electricity this way, hold my hands this way. And then you could do that. And that's really what I'm trying to get across.
How I know we didn't ask, but in the dating world, do you get a lot of this guy's a little off when you talk about this stuff? Do
Well, I'm
people?
not in the. You mean me in the dating world,
Yeah,
dating
when
or
you were doing this and you were dating, or you're married.
nah? I mean, I'm not dating right now, but when I was, I've kind of been the kind of guy where I just meet someone usually and it works out. So it's not really like jumping around dating too much, and
Yeah,
but I wouldn't talk about it that way because I'm focused on the martial arts sobriety aspect. So you know, I'm not going to be walking around doing that all the
right. No, I get
time.
that. I get that. What? Couple more, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the? Was there something that you did to yourself that you were surprised you were able to do? I mean, you're
Yeah.
always trying to do more and better, right, and
Yeah.
bigger. I mean, what
Okay.
was an example of
I
something that you
mean,
were able to do that was surprising to you?
okay. So, I mean, there's a few of them that were like amazing. So, one was I had a foot injury that was there for years. It was bad. And I don't know if I had a stress fracture or not, but it was excruciating. And I remember working on it on myself. I was at an expo and was like, I couldn't walk on it. And I was like, I need to get in there and fix this and figure what's going on. And I spent like 30 minutes on it and it disappeared on the spot. And that was like, oh, wow. There were a bunch of other things. I had some urinary system issues that were also there, lifelong. And when I would work on them, they would resolve. So when I'd actually do something, I could see a change happen pretty fast. I had lower back injuries that I was able to get rid of. I don't have any back issues at all anymore, and I had a lot of them when I was in my 20s. I had a nerve problem in my ankle that disappeared from my own work. Um,
From
there's a lot.
food and drink point of view, you live a pretty clean life, though.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, but the idea of like directing something and getting it to change is amazing. Meaning like where if I have an issue in my body, like I wake up, let's say, and I can't sleep or I'm going through a very stressful time, I know what to do, which is really cool. So I can be like, okay, I'm going to go toward, let's say, the liver meridian or go into my heart and try and adjust the signal a little bit, and I'll get a result from it. And that's really cool. Like it just sort of makes me feel like confident about um, knowing what I know how to do.
When was the last time you got really angry?
Oh, it can happen from time to time. I mean, not never. I would say this, not not ever publicly or an outburst, but I get frustrated about things sometimes.
Yeah, of
You know,
course. Everyone does.
I think that part of mastery for me was to get that to a point where it's not there, where there's control over it.
What do you struggle the most with control?
That's a very good question. Let me think through that.
And I'll get the last question for you too, so you can think about both of them and hit us.
I think, I'll say this. I think that I grew up with a lot of internal imbalances. So my family had a lot of mental illness, a lot of it. Okay, in the coming through Poland and Germany, Holocaust survivors on their side, there was a lot of mental illness. There was a lot of bipolarity in the family. So I learned to control my moods tremendously by doing this work. And I would say that was something that has been amazing and was also very, very challenging. And I've got a pretty strong grip on it now. Because there are times, let's say, where like my chemicals will just do something. And it's not like me wanting to do it. It'll just be like that. And so when I was younger, could not control it. Just could not control it at all. And as I started getting older, it started to become something that was quite controllable with the more I did the work properly. So that's something that has been amazing, is the mood aspect for me has been pretty much, okay, not 100%, but pretty much something I can control. Meaning like if all of a sudden there's a real dip and I don't know why it's there, I can get my system back up, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing to be able to do.
And I want to go further with it. I feel like I still have room to grow with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the object, right? Is to keep getting better, improving,
yeah,
stronger and better at your craft, which is this is your craft, right?
Oh, and I'll give you one other piece here, just to kind of put it all out there. So I definitely had a severe ADHD issue. Okay, when I was a kid, that was probably part of why they put me in the martial arts, and so that's something that I've been able to work with really well, meaning like it's there. So in default mechanism, sometimes have you experienced this type of thing, or do you have any children or anyone who has this type of thing? Or
I think all my friends' kids have ADHD.
okay, so you can see what happens. So basically in default mode, sometimes the brain is just like, it's just going all over the place. Okay, but what happens is when you practice this type of work and you learn to control the signaling, you can hone it in at will at the level that you want, which is incredible. So if you want to meditate or go into a trance, and you can control it, but it's still going to be challenging in default mode. So that's something that I'm also like have learned a lot of mastery over.
How long does this take for the average person?
Not that long.
No,
you can start immediately. Yeah. So if you just take one exercise and you practice it, let's say you came to me for, I don't know, give me something you might want to work on. Like,
oh man, I'd love to not eat all the time.
Okay. So we're just going to turn you into a rock. I'm kidding. So
yeah, you might have
to eat it all. So what I would do with you is I would first get into what I call your core force around this, meaning your heart and your internal organs. And we'd get into like what is making you do that, number one. So is there a chemical imbalance that you're, let's say, not eating the right stuff? Maybe you're not eating the right amount of protein. I don't know, but we try to figure that out, talk about it. Then we go into what part of you is not looking at where you really want to be and not holding the power of that vision. So if you have a vision to be somewhere and you're dropping the vision, it means your electrical force is weak in holding your power. So I would work with you on starting to build up the electricity to hold a very strong vision. Mm-hmm. So that'd be something you'd work on. So then when the craving comes and then all of a sudden you're like, F that, I'm going to eat whatever I want. You're going to learn how to hold steady in that point with a lot more power. And then it becomes easy. You're like, oh, I don't even need to do that.
But I can still do it if I want to.
Yeah, you do it if you want to. But the part of the brain that's addicted will lie to you. And it'll be like, now I want to do it. It's like, I've got a lot of people I've helped get sober. A lot of people who were like high functioning, but also low functioning, meaning they're high in the corporate world, but they're not doing well in their inner life. So when they get really, really focused, they're focused for 3 days, and then all of a sudden that signal comes up and it's like, well, I've been clean for 3 days, I can drink now. It's like, no, you can't. Yeah. But that's the part where there's a split in the personality.
I mean, that's just even be worse on like being a diet. I could diet for a week and then I pig out. It's
right.
drinking, no one should expect to be fine after 3 days, but the
Right.
eating, the diet, you would be like, all right, and then it's
It's
all over
not.
again.
It's not because it hurts. Look, it hurts your psyche. Here's why. That same energy, I guarantee you. Okay, we don't have to be geniuses to understand that same energy probably gets in your way with other things. Like if you want to grow in one area and you can't hold the vision on the food, I'm sure there's other things that you're not getting done right now that you want to get done.
Yeah,
I would assume so. Correct?
I would have to imagine.
Okay, so let's imagine that's the case. So when you correct that core force around that, it's going to carry to everything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing because you're helping people, right? And it's different than you're using the knowledge that you know could be used differently. You could be
Yeah.
using the knowledge that you know to be doing something very different,
Oh
which
yes.
still could be helpful, but it's more. I don't know. I think this is important. There's
Yeah.
too many people out there who have these issues, injuries,
Yeah.
sure, of course, but the addiction part and the not no control.
Yeah.
Ton of people need that, so it's really great
Yeah.
to see you focusing on that. We're going to let you out of the Wolf Den with the same question we let everybody out with.
Okay.
You can meet and spend a day with anyone in the world, one person. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who would you pick, and what would you guys do?
There's so many people that I would want to meet.
What comes to your mind first?
You'd say the one that comes to my mind. I would want to meet a political person. Okay, have to be a political person who wanted to have influence on the masses for health and wellness and was open to this type of thing. So maybe a Barack Obama, maybe him. Be interesting. I'd love to meet him and talk to him a little bit about what his plans are for helping the planet in the health and wellness movement. That would be very interesting.
I think he's the most picked person on
Is he
180,
really?
182 episodes. I think he was picked the most.
Okay.
That's
Um,
fine. It's great. It's a great choice. He's really up there for me. He might be my number one choice. If I knew I was going to be able to make it happen, there might be a few others I'd pick, but he's a great choice. To be able to sit down with someone and have that kind of conversation would be good. I'm surprised you didn't pick the Dalai Lama. People did pick the Dalai Lama.
because the reason I didn't is because I feel like he's already got that going on, and he's on that mission, and so I'm interested in people who have influence and want to understand more how we get some of these ideas into the educational system.
Yeah.
So there's not like when I look at people specifically, they wouldn't be famous people that you know
Well,
we'd
it could be
normally.
anyone. It doesn't have to be famous. It could be anyone in the world. If I was going to say that don't have easy access to, call up Ron up the street. I'm sure he'd be happy to learn about
Right.
it.
Okay, you know what? So I would also add like a media, certain media magnate that could help put programming out about this, about like sobriety. That's where I'd want to be.
Okay. Well, manifest it, right? That's what we do. We
Yeah,
manifest. We manifest
yeah.
on the Wolf Den, and we make it happen. Really appreciate your time. It's
Thank
such
you.
an interesting topic, and a little. It's a hot topic in a way too,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there are people who are going to be naysayers and
Sure.
dismiss it very easily, and that's unfortunate. And full disclosure, I do that a lot. But for the people who can take advantage of it, it's life changing for them.
Sure.
And
And it's hard to dismiss, even if I would say this, even if someone's a skeptic, I always say study first, then be a skeptic. Like, because all I'm saying is really simple concepts.
yeah,
I'm just saying, like, hey, you eat an orange, you have a transfer of energy. So, you breathe, you believe you have to breathe. So you work with your breathing and you can be sober.
yeah,
Simple things.
I agree. But check out sobermartialarts.com. and Instagram as well, which the Instagram might be changing or not, but right now
Yeah,
it's
it will, but
martial
right
arts,
now it's martial arts
arts
and
and
wellness.
wellness. Sifu Matthew, really appreciate your time. I'm
Thank
definitely
you.
gonna have some people reach out to you, and I hope to be in the same room someday and
Definitely, brother.
get to
Let's
talk.
do
We're
it.
not that far away.
For sure. Thank you so much. It was
Yeah,
really enjoyable, and I appreciate the experience with you.
yeah, we'll be talking again soon. Have a great weekend, everyone. We got more Wolf Den next week, and be safe and be good.